Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tigar. Welcome to another exciting Bantha Tracks bonus show. This is still MandoVision, though, and I am your host, Narguy Tom. Check me out on the socials, Mando_Vision on X and Insta. Of course, you can find me at MandoVision on Blue Sky, and you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we have another bonus show. Something I wanted to talk about with you guys and gals and friends and family out there. I just wasn't sure kind of how to get into it. But we're just going to do it. We're going to go for it. We're just going to let this one rip because I have thoughts. And I'm going to just expel them from my mouth into this microphone, and we're gonna have a little chat about it. And I want to see if you think I am a crazy person, which most of you probably already do, or you're like, hey, maybe he's got a point here. All right, but let's go ahead. Let's do the thing we got to do first. And you know what that is? It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
All right, Bucketheads, the thing I wanted to talk to you about. You may be aware, or you may not, depending if you have the HBO. I am a huge Star Wars fan. This is known. What may not be known is that I am also a very big Game of Thrones fan. Love the original series. Love the books that it was based on. I'll be honest, I have mixed feelings about House of the Dragon. I'm not the world's biggest Targaryen fan. So, that show's been a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a thing for me. But recently, HBO aired the full season, all 6 episodes, of the latest Game of Thrones spin-off show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Not Jedi Knight, but could it be a Jedi Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? And what I mean by that is, what's wonderful about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, all the things that I'm about to talk to you guys about, I think are completely applicable to Star Wars. I don't see why Star Wars couldn't do the things that they're doing on A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and give us some really rousing, fun Star Wars adventures on a different scale, and that's all it really matters. So, as I said, I am a Game of Thrones fan. I've read all the books that currently exist, including the novellas that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is based on, the tales of Sir Duncan the Tall and his squire Egg. And I'll try to avoid spoilers for anyone who hasn't either read the books or watched the show just yet. So I'll try not to dive too deeply onto certain topics that, if you're trying to get to that show, I won't say anything. We'll be good. We'll be good here. Because one of the things that's one of the most translatable elements of this show, I believe, to Star Wars is the fact that Star Wars, like this show, could be smaller. It could be. We've seen books and comics that are of less grandiose nature, that are less, let's just put it this way. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is not about reshaping all of Westeros. Just like the way the Star Wars saga is about reshaping the galaxy during the Galactic Civil War. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a much smaller story of a guy and his squire just out there roaming the realm and trying to do good and bring goodness to the little people, to the small people who are often ignored by the powerful houses, by the powerful families of Westeros. This is something that Star Wars can do too. And again, I will try not to dovetail too much into other topics of Star Wars, specifically The Last Jedi. But something that The Last Jedi tried to do was show us that your last name shouldn't be that important. And that's what the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is trying to do too. Dunk is not a Targaryen. He is not a Baratheon. He is not anybody. He's just a guy trying to do good. And isn't that what we could get more stories about in Star Wars? A Jedi Knight roving the galaxy, just doing good, just trying to bring hope to the hopeless. Why isn't this something that's more on people's radar? Why isn't this something that's not being considered over at Lucasfilm and Disney? It's a smaller scale show, so they're going to be able to film it more frequently. They're already filming season 2 of the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms because its scope and scale is so much less than the mind-bending adventures across the entire kingdom in Game of Thrones and in House of the Dragon. And again, Star Wars has sort of built itself up to be these galaxy-spanning, we must save the entire universe kind of things. And you can have really good, poignant storytelling on a much smaller scale and a much smaller scope with Star Wars characters. You really, really can. I truly believe it. And again, whether it's a Jedi Knight going from place to place, from town to town, like Dr. Bruce Banner in the Incredible Hulk TV show back in the day. I mean, you can do these things with Star Wars. We've talked about how Star Wars there's a flavor for everyone, right? It's the Baskin Robbins of things. Like there is a flavor for everyone. So why can't we do this? Why can't we have this exist in Star Wars? Just a guy or a gal. I'm no biases here. Just a Jedi Knight going around doing good things, helping people, getting cats from trees, moving some rocks around when necessary. I think it could be a really heartfelt and fascinating series if we gave it a chance to breathe, and if we didn't force it to have galaxy-spanning repercussions all the time. I thought back to the first season of The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian started this way. It started small, and it didn't take too long for it to grow and grow and grow and become this bigger thing that connected to the larger Star Wars universe. And sure, okay, that is the path that it took to tell the story that it wants to tell of this one lone Mandalorian who's now become part of the bigger galaxy. Sure, cool. All right, we'll see how that works out when that movie comes out in a few months. I'm excited to see if it does translate. But we could do Star Wars on a smaller scale, with smaller scope. It doesn't have to be the end of the universe at all times. The stakes don't always have to be that big. And I feel like there's a lot of lessons that Star Wars can learn from this show. Again, check it out if you have not watched the show. It's very well done. It's very well executed. Very good performances, strong writing, and clever use of its budget. Let's be perfectly frank. One of the reasons why Star Wars shows take forever is because they're expensive. You can do it smaller. They just showed us how. Game of Thrones those shows are expensive. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms just showed us how to do it for cheaper, for leaner. It's leaner, it's meaner, it's faster, and it's eminently enjoyable. Why can't we have this? Why can't this exist? I don't know if it's a unwillingness to be smaller in scale and in scope. If Star Wars just doesn't want to upset a certain percentage of the fan base who thinks everything has to be at stake all the time. Because again, I've read Star Wars stories, for 40 years now. And not everything was about saving the galaxy. Smaller scale, smaller scope, but, still with stakes, just personal stakes, like in this show, it's about, Duncan proving himself, and that's all it has to be sometimes. It doesn't have to, again, it does not have to be some story where the universe will die if this guy doesn't do this thing. Okay? That smaller personal stories still have a ton of action, still have a ton of heart, still a ton of character development. Star Wars can do this. I would just like to see them actually do it. And again, I'm sure we are in a period right now where they are in a bit of a they're trying to figure out what their approach is going to be moving forward, with Kathleen Kennedy stepping down and Dave Filoni and the other person who's going to be more of the financial person and calling the shots on these things. But I feel like that financial person really should be paying attention to this show, to A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and saying, yeah, why can't we do that? There's got to be like some kind of roaming Jedi Knight story that we can tell that's smaller in scale, smaller in scope, smaller in budget, and a show that we can crank out every year like clockwork. It can be done. Streaming changed TV in a lot of ways, but I think we've been starting to see us roll that back a little bit because of shows like Game of Thrones that were so big and so massive and so epic that it was years between seasons. I mean, think about that on Amazon if you're watching the Rings of Power show, right? I feel like it's been 2 years since the last season of that already because the show's so big and so massive in scope. Smaller, leaner, meaner. Star Wars can do this. I believe in it. And again, The Mandalorian started this way. Remember, The Mandalorian was very episodic in its nature at the beginning. It can still be. Star Wars has shown they can do it. They just, they drew Din Djarin and Grogu into the larger universe. It felt inevitable, obviously, with the Force and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, I would be a big fan and supporter of us coming up with a character and doing this. And again, I get it. Maybe it's a little bit trickier because in the Game of Thrones universe, you have George R.R. Martin, who's sort of like the architect of all of it, and it's all based on his stories. And the maker himself, George Lucas, isn't involved anymore with Star Wars and coming up with ideas like this. But Filoni learned at his feet, right? Why can't we tell something? Why can't we tell a Star Wars story that is, again, just leaner, meaner, and smaller? Just a Jedi on a planet making his way around this world or going from planet to planet. You can do it in a Star Wars fashion that is smaller and interesting, but still Star Wars. You don't have to take the Star Wars out of it. It can just be done as like a weekly episodic show and not be a part of something grandiose. And I guess that is really what I want to impart to the people at Lucasfilm, to the people at Disney. Not that they're going to hear this show, but maybe if enough of us get on board with this idea and start kind of like talking about it, hit them up at Celebration, hit them up at the Comic-Cons when we're at these panels and they're taking Q&As. It's like, why don't we do something like this? Why can't we have a show like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? And, I mean, you can do it for so many aspects of it. It doesn't even have to be a Jedi Knight. I think Jedi Knight is your best entry point to a show like this. But there's so many character types in Star Wars that are fascinating. I'd watch a show like this about bounty hunters. I'd watch a show like this about smugglers. I'd watch a show about like this about rebel soldiers or like new Republic people just trying to make a difference in a post Empire galaxy, right? I mean, it can be done. It can be done, and we've seen glimpses of it in The Mandalorian. So, and it works as a concept for Star Wars as well. But I think if you go back, watch those 6 episodes of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, again, on the HBO, there are very valuable lessons to be learned. And Star Wars could take some of these and apply it to themselves. So, I think that's all I have for you on this topic. But, let me know. Did you watch A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Did you like it? Did you see what I saw and that there's a way for Star Wars to do this too? Or do you think I'm out of my mind and you only want Star Wars when it's all about saving the galaxy? It's got to be high stakes all the time, and it has to be on a galactic scale, or you don't want anything to do with it. I guess that's where I'm sort of curious how you feel as a Star Wars fan. You know my take. I'm the Baskin-Robbins guy. So many flavors. One for everybody at least, if not more. So why can't we have this flavor as well? Food for thought. All right, Bucketheads. That's going to wrap up this Bantha Tracks bonus show. Again, make sure you're following on the socials at Mando_Vision on X and Insta, MandoVision at Blue Sky. And, of course, you can email the show, MandoVisionTom@gmail.com. This is the MandoVision Podcast. I am your host, Nargai Tom. Make sure you are liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And, of course, if you have the time, the inclination, sweet, sweet, sweet 5-star reviews. All right, Bucketheads, go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding, tolerant, and patient. And we'll be back with another episode as we begin to wrap up our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. But remember, this podcast, it only ends one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
I would like to see the baby. Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.